That's not what happened.
Yeah, no. You can ask my wife too. Like my superpower is I have the ability to unintentionally anger women of all ages. Just really good at it. Without even trying, I can tick women off.
And you have
And
2 daughters.
yeah, it's work, and I'm good at it. So I'm pretty intelligent. I'm a school teacher, and I got good grades and test scores and IQ tests and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. When it comes to anything with X chromosomes, I'm a 4-year-old. Like I'm a complete and utter moron. And again, I told my wife that before we got married. She's like, "Yeah, okay." And then she finally saw it one day, and she was mad about something. I'm like, whoa, I just need you to know I told you about this. And she went, "You did? I just didn't realize how big." And I'm like, it's like my first wife never believed me because she actually told me one time. She's like, "There's no way, there's no way." And I'm like, "Honey, look at the evidence." She went, "No, no, there's no way you're that smart and that stupid at the same time." And I'm like, "Okay." So to this day, I don't know if she believes it, but
You're
whatever.
like, "Let me prove it to you every
Well, I
day."
wasn't really trying to, but the problem is when you're dumb, it comes out, and it did.
In your defense, we don't even understand ourselves.
No, you people are strange. That's what I tell the kids the first day. So I teach this year. I'm teaching middle school, and I tell the girls like I just need you guys to know you're weird. You're weird people. You don't make any sense. Like, and
And
you don't.
they're
And the
at
thing
that
is,
age where their
yeah. Oh,
weirdness is coming through. The
yeah.
poor boys that age, hey?
Oh man. Oh man. Yeah. And the boys are going. Yeah, I know, right? They're weird. I'm like, yes. Because secretly, like I'm 12 years old anyway, so I haven't really matured. Like burp jokes are funny and fart jokes are funny and whatever.
You're
So,
the guys that you're teaching your class, you get them.
oh yeah, yeah. 12 and 13-year-old boys, like they're not hard to figure out. They've got like one track mind anywhere. They're either thinking about girls or food or sports. Like that's it. And to
And
be
that
honest,
never
like
changes.
that's right. At 38, still the same. I'm thinking about my wife. I'm thinking about food. I'm thinking about soccer. That's pretty much.
But one at a time, though, not all three at once.
Apparently, I have a face that I make when I'm thinking about soccer. My wife will actually like we're driving down the road and there's a lull in the conversation and she'll just look at me. She goes, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, "I'm thinking about that 3-4-3 that we ran last game and how." And she goes, "Yeah, oh, I know. I know you're thinking soccer. You have it on your face."
I really wanna talk about blended families and divorce. I haven't talked about really either of that, any of my conversations so far.
Okay.
I'm my parents are divorced, so but
Okay.
they didn't get divorced until I was 18.
I remember you mentioned that in our sort of pre-conversation. It was a
Mhm.
month or so ago. Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's tough though. That's a different dynamic even because when you
'Cause you're basically an adult now. It's like
that's
it's
right.
almost 3 people arguing.
Right. And not only that, but it's also hard because especially if you were just about to go to college or to university, now where do you come home to? Because where's home? Is it where you lived with whichever parent happens to still be there? Or what if they sell the home and they both move to a new place because that like you were already being uprooted and now it's even harder because where are you going to go home to? And that's yeah, that's a I mean there's no easy age for a kid
Mm-mm.
for their parents to get divorced and
It's
every
a
age
different
comes with its
experience,
pitfalls. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's
so like
pros and cons to each.
my kids were geez, like 3 and 5, I think when their mom and I
So their
split up,
whole
2 and
life.
4. Yeah, so the older one remembers a little bit of her mom and I fighting. Her mom, she remembers a little bit of us not getting along real well. The younger one has no memory of that, and so it really wasn't until about a year or 2 ago that the younger one started grieving what she had lost because she didn't know it. But again, when she started hitting, puberty, 11, 12, 13, then she really started having a harder time with mom and dad not being together, mom and dad both being married to other people, that kind of stuff. So there's never any good age, but depending on the age the kids are when it happens, that changes the dynamic of how the kids respond. So yeah,
You were young when you got married, hey?
I was. The first time I got married, I was 19. I was halfway through my college career. I'd played 2 years of college here in the States. I played one semester over in England and studied at Oxford University while I was there. That was a lot of fun. And I came back home and got married for the first time. I was 19. And I immediately stopped playing soccer so that I could get a job because I figure if I'm old enough to get married and be an adult, then I need to not send my wife to work to pay the bills while I play a game. And so I gave up my playing career and immediately started coaching, and I've been coaching ever since. And
Was that
then
a tough decision?
oh, it was heartbreaking, but it was also I believed it was the right call. My dad even asked me, said, "I know you love this girl, but your dream's been to play college soccer for a long time, since before you ever met her. Are you sure you're doing the right thing?" I said, "Yes, because I got to live out my dream. I got to put on the jersey. I got to walk out of the locker room. I got to play in front of the crowds. I will miss I'll miss not doing it. And in fact, I don't know if it's because I stopped playing, but the year after I stopped playing, we had quite possibly the greatest soccer season my college has ever had that next year. We were in
Typical.
yeah, we were in the top 10 in the country all year long. We made it to the Elite Eight, the quarterfinals of the national tournament. We won our conference, won our region. Like, we were absolutely phenomenal that year. And it was cool because I was still on the sidelines. I was a student assistant coach, so I got to be there, and that was fun.
Do you have any resentment though?
I purposely concentrated hard on not. I
But you
purposely
were
concentrated
aware,
hard
like,
on
you
not.
had to actively choose
Yeah,
not to be resentful.
absolutely had to. Well, I've loved the game since I was 3 years old. I've always been around the game, and I wanted to play it. My original dream had been to play and then, travel the whole world playing in every third tier divisions, doing tryouts till somebody would pick me up just so I could say that I'd played professional soccer. I don't care if it had been in the, Norwegian 4th division or, like, doesn't matter. That was my plan. And then, as often happens with guys, your plans get derailed by a female. And that was what happened. But again, I don't resent her for it now. I didn't resent her for it then. And the biggest reason is because we got married young. We also had kids young. My oldest daughter was born 3 weeks after I got my diploma. And so, like, my entire senior year of college, I was a full-time student. I had a full-time job, I had a part-time job, I had a pregnant wife. I was 21 years old. And so
You have a
my
completely different life than every other 21-year-old you were friends with.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it also means I don't have any patience when students tell me, "I didn't have time to get my homework done." Like, you're full of crap. How much time do you spend on your phone? How much time do you spend playing video games? Like, you had 10 minutes of civics homework. Look at that.
You had time, it just wasn't a priority.
Yeah, you didn't take the time. That's the issue. You had time. You didn't take the time. Don't lie to me. But no, that's the thing
I'd
is,
be scared to be your student, Joel.
yeah, the thing is, I think I have a lot of fun in my classroom. I think I'm a pretty fun teacher
You don't
to
look
have.
scary, but the moment you said that, I would've
Yeah, well, and then that's the thing is
gave
I'm
a
I'm not a
tip-top shape.
I'm not a terribly scary guy, especially if you're in my class. I'm only 5'3". You can't tell because I'm seated, but I'm the size of a lot of my middle schoolers. A couple of them are taller than me already. But I have the kind of personality to where when I need to exhibit authority, when I need to exude that type of persona, I can, and it can become pretty intimidating pretty quickly. Apparently, I never thought of myself that way, but I've heard that from many of my students, current and former. But that's the thing is, I loved playing, I loved coaching, and I knew that was something I wanted to do, and so I'm glad to get to do those things. When we had our first daughter, I also moved 500 miles away from where I'd been in college up to where her parents lived and got a job. So
Which
20
state to which state?
uh, technically Georgia. It's on top of Lookout Mountain. So I went to Covenant College, little Presbyterian school, basically Chattanooga, Tennessee, drive up the mountain. On top, you're in Lookout Mountain, but it's Chattanooga's the closest place people have heard of. So we moved from there up to Fayetteville, North Carolina, about 500 miles, and I got a job teaching and coaching high school. And I was, again, 21 years old, teaching and coaching 14 through 18-year-olds. That was really hard to do.
Which
Had
is
a brand new
crazy, it's
baby.
like some of these kids are 3 years younger than you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, they had siblings older than I
That's
was.
so
Yeah, there
strange.
was one girl that was a senior whose boyfriend was older than I was, that kind of thing. It was just a weird
That's so weird.
Yeah, it was just a weird dynamic, but I learned a lot. I had a good time. Second year teaching there,
It
found out we were
must have
pregnant
been
with our
hard to get
second daughter.
respect from them
It was.
sometimes.
I think that's
Yeah.
part of when I developed some of that persona is because I had to. Because again, and that's the other thing that I tell people all the time, coaching girls is a million times easier than coaching guys, specifically for me.
Really?
Oh, they listen so much better, especially teenage girls. They listen so much better than teenage boys because again, at 5'3", if I walk onto a soccer field to play, nobody respects me till I play. If I walk into a classroom or onto a field to coach, nobody respects me until I give them a reason to, because I don't look like a coach. If I'm 6'2", and I'm 210 pounds and I look like a coach, that's a different thing. At 5'3" and a $160, like that guy looks like he could be in middle school. No, but you know what I mean? And so I've had to develop that
He
type
might be a
of
player.
that's that was actually exactly right. Well, that's the other fun part about coaching high school girls or teenage girls. The referee knows I'm the coach. I'm the only guy around. Right. When I was coaching teenage boys, the referee would come to the sideline and look and look and look. And it's like, where's the coach? I'm like, God bless it. So I grew facial hair so I could at least look like I'm in my 20s. That's the things I like. I'm 2 years away from being 40. But if I shave, I could pass for being in college or right out of college. It's ridiculous. It drives me crazy. So,
Especially when you're in the type of job where you need that authority and respect. It's
yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, if you were 6'2", 200 pounds,
Right.
you get that respect and
Correct.
authority immediately.
Yep. Yeah. And it's funny because I've actually had parent-teacher conferences when I was a younger teacher where the parent would walk in and sit down and they're looking around like, what are you doing in here? I'm the teacher you're meeting with. Oh, I thought you were a student that was waiting for another. Okay, well, your kid's going to fail, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
Minus 10 points, I don't like your parents.
Yeah. Teacher's comments, "Your parents suck."
That's exactly right. Didn't like your mom and dad.
The fun part about being a teacher, a lot of power comes from it too.
No, I love it. It really is a lot of fun. The hard part today is kind of like with you and with me, a lot of kids come into a classroom now from blended families. And that is a different dynamic. So when a kid comes in, it's helpful to know, did they come from mom's house or dad's house? Because they're coming from very different environments depending on what their blended family
And their
situations
attitude
are.
is gonna match that.
That's exactly right.
They
So like
already
I've
have
got
an attitude if
yeah,
everything at home was perfect.
that's right. And so, like, I've got one kid who comes in. His mom is his mom and dad are divorced. Mom is not married. Dad is remarried and has other kids with second wife. Well, it's a very different dynamic if he's coming from a home where he's the only kid, or if he's coming from a home where he's one out of three. And it's also a question of, when a kid comes in, hey, I left my textbook at mom's house last week, and dad hasn't let me go pick it up, or whatever. You know what I mean? Or mom, that just
It's such a tough position to be in. There's
yeah,
so
it's
much pressure on a
yeah,
kid
yeah,
to have to go explain that to a teacher. It's like you can't expect a 13-year-old to balance mom and dad's
yeah,
whatever argument they just got in this week. It's like,
yeah.
"Sorry, I don't have homework because my parents are children."
Yeah. Well, and the other hard part about that too is a lot of teachers, especially that are older than I am, didn't come from but it was a lot less common. Well, I graduated high school in 2000, and I remember graduating with, tiny, tiny high school. I graduated class. I think 2, 3 of our parents were divorced. I can think of 3 for certain out of 14. Today, in my class of 14 kids, I teach at a small Christian school. It's 8 or 9 out of 14 that come from that kind of background, and
It's
that's pretty
more normal than not now.
that's exactly right. It's over half. And so there's a lot of new challenges that come with that teachers, I believe, are not as equipped for if they're not used to it. So one of the things that I'm starting to do, in addition to working with couples, I do blended family coaching, that kind of thing. One of the other things I'm really wanting to do is to start doing training for teachers and school boards and things like that, to let them know, hey, just FYI, 21st century student doesn't just mean a kid who's good with computers. 21st century student also means they're coming from a drastically different home life than kids who were born in the 1980s, 90s, and even the earliest of the 2000s. But these kids that are born in like 2005 and after, it's a whole different breed. They've grown up with smartphones and smartwatches. They don't know any life before YouTube and Wikipedia. And there's a better than average chance mom and dad aren't married anymore. And so you have to take those
So,
into
it's an
account.
interesting recipe.
Yeah, you have to take those into account when you're teaching those kids. And again, it has nothing to do with the subject matter. You still need to
Mhm.
teach the history, the math, the science, but you need to be more understanding, and you need to be more flexible when it comes to, did you bring your device? Which I hate, by the way. I don't use that crap in my classroom. Like, I'm not an entire Luddite, but in general, you give me a book and paper, and we're going to learn better than if you give kids a computer or an iPad or something like that. I'm a firm believer in the classical model of education, where you read good works, you discuss them, you write about them, you talk about what you read and what you wrote, and therefore everyone is learning by doing. I'm not a big fan of, here's this thing, upload it, fill in the blanks on it, submit it to me via Google. Bump that crap, man.
You're not teaching to achieve test scores, you're
Nope,
teaching,
not even a
"Let's
tiny bit.
expand your mind."
Yep, I could give a crap about your test scores. They don't say anything about you as a person. I'm a firm believer that the purpose of education has nothing to do with test scores. It has nothing to do with graduation. It has nothing to do with college education or your job. The purpose of your education is to make you a better human being. Like, that was the whole purpose of education as far back as education has existed. Go back and look at Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And the point of education is to help you be a better and well-rounded human being. And if it's not doing that, your education is for crap. I don't care what your test scores are. Because here's the thing: if you're expanding your mind, then your test scores are going to go up. But here's the other thing that C.S. Lewis wrote in a brilliant book called The Abolition of Man. He said that education divorced from morals only serves to make man into more clever devils. If there's no moral component to your education, all you've done is created a more clever, sinful human being. And that's not good,
Mm.
right? So the idea there is, when you're being educated, you need to also be learning to love the good. You need to appreciate beauty. You need to understand, and you need to learn empathy. And if you're doing those things, heck with your test scores, you need to be a better human being. That's what we need to be doing. Because if your test scores are great, but you're a crap kid, nobody wants that either, right? So again, and I think
Yeah,
that's
you
important in
you can
blended family
be you
life.
can be intelligent, you can get all the work done, but if you're not great to be around. No one's gonna wanna work with you
Yeah.
in the real
Well,
world.
and there are plenty of examples of really smart, morally bankrupt leaders, and that is frustrating. So what I want to try to do with every kid that I teach is, heck with your scores. The result is, when you leave my classroom, are you a better human being? Did you learn to think better, read better, write better, be more compassionate? If so, we've had a brilliant semester. If not, I failed my job. I don't care if everybody got A's and learned a whole bunch of history. If you're still terrible people when you leave, I didn't do my job. And that's especially important now when kids are coming from homes where they're seeing bad examples a lot of the time. Because, like you said,
All day.
fortunately, a lot of times, and I get it, but unfortunately, a lot of times blended family examples at home are really hard because the parents are so caught up in their own hurt that they're acting out of that hurt in front of their kids. And that makes it difficult. And so I recently started my podcast called 10 CBF. Now, what that stands for is the 10 Commandments for Blended Families. And it's this teaching that I came up with about 2 or 3 years ago. It's based on research, my own experiences, a number of books that I've read. But the idea behind it is, if blended families would learn to follow these key principles, then every kid coming from those blended families is going to be better off because they focused on taking care of what you can take care of and also being respectful to the other home, even if they're not being respectful back to you. Right. So there's two pillars that everything rests on. They're very simple. First one is, be the adult you want your kid to become. It's very simple. If you don't want your kid to be snarky and arrogant and rude and disrespectful, stop modeling that for them. And then the second one is, remember your golden rule from kindergarten: treat other people the way you want to be treated. That includes your ex. Now, those are very easy to say. It's very hard to do. And I totally understand that. Again, I'm divorced and remarried. I've seen it when my parents divorced. I'm not saying it's easy. Nobody said it was easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. You have to forgive me for asking this. Are you old enough to remember the movie A League of Their Own?
I'm not that much younger than you. Who was in it? What year did that come out?
It's a Tom Hanks movie, I believe, from the late 80s. It's basically about the women's professional baseball league in America during World
It
War II.
sounds really familiar, but talk to it.
During the movie, Tom Hanks plays a baseball manager who is unable to go fight in World War II because he has no cartilage in his knee. And it's made him kind of bitter. And that comes out in the way he manages these female professional baseball players. And the best player in the league is Gina Davis's character. She's just a brilliant athlete, and everybody knows it. And then about 2/3 of the way through the season, she just quits. And Tom Hanks's character is just furious at her. And he goes and talks with her and he says, "Why?" She says, "Well, it just got too hard." And he looks at her and he grits his teeth and he says, "It's the hard that makes it great. If it were easy, everybody would do it." Well, that's it with blended families. Like, your kids have already seen, and I'm not placing blame on anybody. Okay. I'm not placing blame on husbands or wives or neither or both. I don't know what your situation is, but if you're listening to this and you're from a blended family, here's the thing. Your kid has already seen one example of how not to do it. And again, I'm not placing blame. I'm not casting stones. Trust me. Again, I'm divorced for a reason. And a lot of that was my own fault. What I am saying is, your kids expect you to stay together and you haven't. So what you can do now is still try to treat their mom well or their dad well for the kid's sake. You're not doing it for your ex. You're doing it to show your kid an example of how to love someone, even if you don't necessarily like them a lot. Because isn't that what we want to teach our kids anyway when they're in, kindergarten coming on up? Well, they were mean to me. Okay, we'll hit them in the face. No, that's not what we teach kids. They were mean to me. We'll be nice back to them anyway. Well, they're going to be mean to me again. Yes, that may be true, but you still need to be nice to them anyway. That's what we're supposed to do. Well,
A lot of parents don't know how to teach that.
no, well, we don't know how to model it. It's like we forget it when we
Mhm.
become adults. And again, I'm just as guilty as other people of having done that. In fact, one of the stories that I share is, not long after my divorce, for some reason, I'm an idiot, and I thought it'd be a good idea to go gripe to my ex-wife's dad about her. Because that makes total sense, right? Yeah.
Joel,
Anyway,
no.
yeah, I know. I'm kind of an idiot. So I went and I talked with him, and I don't even remember what I was griping about now. I was angry about something. And I'm griping about his daughter because, everybody loves to hear that. And he finally stopped me and he said, "Joel, just, you need to be quiet." It's kind of rude. Okay, what? He said, "Here's the thing. If you couldn't get her to do what you wanted her to do when you were married, what on earth makes you think you can get her to do what you want her to do now?" And I thought, man, he's right. I mean, jabs you right in the heart. But and I realized two things. One, it was never my job to just get her to do what I wanted her to do. That's not what a husband's supposed to do. I was not a very good husband in my first marriage. I will fully admit that. And I'm trying to be a better one in my second marriage. But the other thing I realized is, not only was it not my job then, it is completely out of the realm of possibility now. right?
You'll never get a woman to do anything that you want her to do. The
What I
moment
mean,
she knows that you want it, she's not gonna do it.
I refuse to say anything. I cannot confirm
Plead the
nor deny
5th.
that. That's exactly right. Because there will be females who listen to this. My wife may be one of them.
Joel, you mentioned something really interesting. You said, "I'm divorced, and basically there's a reason why, and I am to blame in a lot of ways." Can you
Mhm.
talk to me about that at all?
Yeah, the thing is, I there are a lot of different reasons that we got divorced, but a large part of it had to do with my own issues, specifically anger. I mentioned that I'm 5'3", and the Napoleon complex or short man syndrome or whatever you want, it's a real thing. And for me, it showed itself as anger. From the time I was little, I was always a very bitter, angry human being. I used to take it out on the soccer field when I played. It's my favorite part of the game. I could knock down a guy who was 6 foot tall, and they weren't ever going to call a foul on me because they'd look at the 6 foot guy and go, "Look at this dude. Get in the weight room." Right? And that was great because I got away with a ton and it was wonderful. But it allowed me a way to channel my aggression, but it wasn't enough. And so in my mom's house, I would basically pitch fits and lose my temper. And I punched holes in walls, I punched holes in doors, I kicked holes in doors. And eventually, when I was about 15, my dad bought me a big heavy punching bag for Christmas, big like Rocky style, huge bag. I still have it actually. And there's parts of that bag that you could use for a pillow because I beat the bejesus out of them for over 20 years now. But I was just a very angry person. And then about 2 years before my divorce, 2.5 years, we found out my dad was sick with cancer. He was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. It was something that he was probably exposed to when he was serving in Vietnam. And it affected me pretty bad because my dad was my hero growing up. I wanted to
Of
be just like
course.
him in a lot of ways. I grew up playing soccer and baseball because he'd been a college baseball player, and one of the last things he taught me before he died was how to read a box score. And then he went and got some. He said he had some of his old box scores from college in a notebook, and he brought it over to me. He said, "Hey, okay, so now that you know what you're looking at, look at this one. Tell me what's important about that." And I looked at it. I kind of did a double take. I said, "Holy crap, Dad, this is a no hitter." He said, "Yeah, I caught that game my senior year of college. You got to catch a no hitter. Like that's incredible." And so when Dad got sick, we moved back from North Carolina to my hometown here in Anniston, Alabama, and we lived with Dad for a few months, and then he moved to Chattanooga, where my brother and his wife lived to do some better cancer treatments up there. And then he died in July of 2008.
Wow.
Uh, when he died, everything fell apart. I became even angrier, which was saying something, and I took it out on the kids that I taught and the kids that I coached, and I took it out on my daughters who were very young and very soft-hearted, and I took it out on my first wife who didn't deserve it. And that was one of the major issues in us splitting up, is just my anger because I took it out on the people around me because they were convenient targets and I didn't realize how badly I was hurting them. My former mother-in-law mentioned it to me a couple different times and I just sloughed it off because I didn't want to hear it. And the other thing I was really bad about was to distract myself from the pain and the anger. I was really good at just ignoring my wife and kids in order to watch sports. So I'd watch soccer games or I'd turn on, I'm a huge Duke basketball fan. So I'd turn on a Duke game and, there's 35, 40 of those a year. Or I was coaching all the
It's
time.
a way to numb your brain and what's
Right. And,
actually happening.
and that was exactly what I did. And so those are some of the major factors. There's other things, but those are a lot of the major factors that went into the divorce. And I didn't realize how badly I'd hurt my kids until a couple years ago when I had a conversation with my older daughter about it. And she said, "Dad, I remember being a little kid, and I remember a couple days when you came home from school just dreading you coming home because I knew when you got there you were gonna be angry about something. Or if you weren't, you were going to be angry pretty soon and you were probably going to yell." And I just didn't like that. And that was really hard to hear from a kid who I have great memories of being a little. I remember doing all the daddy daughter stuff. We played tea parties and I learned how to braid her hair 3 different ways and tried to teach her how to salsa dance with my very limited skills and taught her how to kick a soccer ball and throw and catch a baseball. We're much better now, but for about a year and a half, she went to
How
live
old
I
is
mean,
she at this time?
she's now 16, but at
No, at
that
that
time she was
time.
probably 13, 14. She went to live with her mom full time instead of because our kids had gone back and forth a week at a time. She went to go live with her mom.
Joel, that must have killed you.
It wasn't my favorite thing that I've ever been through. We went and, we've seen a counselor about it a few times. We've talked with different people about it. And again, my older daughter and I are much better now. I'm very thankful for that. Much, much better. She played on my soccer team this fall. We had a great time driving to practice and the games. We had some wonderful conversations. I broke my foot in a motorcycle wreck about 8 weeks ago. And so she had to drive to a lot of our games. I spent the whole season on crutches.
She's
And
driving you.
yeah, she was driving me around. And so she didn't she couldn't put her earbuds in and listen to stuff because she was driving, and so
She had to keep you company.
we had to talk. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Oh god.
And we had a great time though. We had some great conversations, and just recently on one of our most recent conversations, she said, I know we've talked about when I was younger some of the hard memories, but I also have some really great memories from when I was a kid. And I said, I'm really glad because there was a time when I thought you just didn't have any. And that broke my heart because I have a lot. And I really want you to have some too. She goes, no, I do. I do. I just those weren't what popped in my head first time. I said, that's totally understandable. And I appreciate you being open and honest and willing to tell me that because that couldn't have been fun. Like some of the stuff she said to me was really
Did you
hard to hear.
remember those things that she was telling you?
Oh
Or
yeah.
oh,
The
yeah.
hard memories. Oh yeah. No,
But it was
I
even probably scarier to you that you realized, "Oh, you remember them too."
yeah, that's it. I didn't realize how big an effect it had on her. My ex-wife once described our daughters as having tissue paper hearts, and I
They
never
sound so
really,
sweet.
yeah, I never really understood that. And unfortunately, what it did is it caused me to, again, to take some of that out on them. And, and that was really hard. And I can understand why their mom was worried about that sort of thing. I didn't verbally abuse them. I didn't emotionally abuse them. I didn't physically abuse them. But
No, you
also,
were fighting with your ex-wife and their
well,
mom, and
well, but I
that
was, yeah,
impacts them.
and I was taking out my pain in a way that wasn't healthy. And that's just I can't go back and change it. If I could, I would. But all I can do now is try to repair what I've broken, and I'm trying to do that. About a month and a half ago, my younger daughter also wanted to go live with her mom, so she is. And I knew when the older daughter did, the younger one would. It was a matter of time
Yeah, they go in
because
a pair probably.
well, that's the thing is that that's the one
It's not
constant
about
they know.
you anymore, it's
Yeah,
they wanna be
that
together.
so that's the thing is when their mom and I split up, the two constants they had in their lives were each other and the school they go to. They have teachers that love them, teachers that we know, teachers that know us. Those were the two constants. Their mom had to, move to an apartment and then a house, and I moved in with a different guy and then with a house, and she remarried, I remarried, and they have a little brother at their mom's house now. He's like 5. She had a little boy with her second husband. And so when the older daughter went to live with her mom full time, I knew the younger one would eventually because that's where her sister was and that's where her brother was. So it's really, and again, that's a situation going to school. Like one week, she's an only child. And then the next week, she's the middle of 3. That's a really different kid coming to school each week. And one week she's with her dad,
Totally.
and one week she's with her mom, and it's very different environments. And again, I'm not comparing better and worse. I'm not making value statements, just
No,
different.
there's just a lot of changes all the
Yeah.
time.
And thankfully, again, their teachers know us. Their teachers know our story. We live in a town of less than 30,000 people. Okay. It's a
That's the
small
type of
town in
town I grew
Alabama.
up into.
Yeah, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody's business, good, bad, and ugly.
Yep.
And fortunately, my kids' teachers don't treat them any differently because of me. I'm very glad for that. But it's helpful that their teachers know. Okay, this week she was at her mom's house. This week she's at her dad's house. Or okay, now both girls are living with their mom, and their dad is seeing them a little bit less often, and whatever it is. It's just good for them to be aware of that because it changes those things. So you think about who your kids are when they're around you versus who your kids are when they're around maybe family members. I know in some families, like you don't want your kids to go visit their grandparents because they come back spoiled, or you don't want them to go visit a certain aunt or uncle because they come back and don't listen to a dang thing because in the other house the rules are different. Well, the same thing can happen in blended families. You need to know where the kids are coming from if you're going to have a better understanding of who they
And
are
you
and
and
why
your
they are
ex
that
need
way.
to be on the same page, and
Yeah.
that's not easy.
No, that's one of the things that I try to teach. So one of the 10 commandments is to be as consistent as possible. And what I mean by that is consistency of values, even if it's not consistency of behavior. So the example that I give is bedtimes. A few years ago, when the girls are still going back and forth over here, bedtime was about a half hour or an hour earlier than it was at their mom's house.
That makes
And
a big
so
difference.
it can, but the other thing is their mom let them sleep in longer. They just didn't have as much time to get ready. And so they were basically getting close to, within a half hour each night, the same amount of sleep. Well, you can argue, well, that's not good for them. That's not consistent. No, no, no. The consistency was we want our children to be healthy, happy, and functional. That means they need to get enough sleep. Now, if that means they go to bed at 9 and sleep until 6:30 and they have to be ready by 7:15, that's okay. If that means they go to bed at 8 or 8:30 and they can get up at 6 o'clock and have more time to get ready, that's okay too. The consistency is the value of we want our children to get enough sleep. What that looks like in each house can be different because it's also not my job to parent my kids at their mom's house. It's not her
As
job to
much as
parent
you
the kids
want
over
to.
here. That's right. And you can't. And that's something blended family parents have got to let go of. Your rules cannot apply in the other house unless you're willing to let their rules apply in your house. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways and expect your kids to get anything good out of it. Even if you think your ways are better and right, it doesn't matter. You can't have it both ways. and that's something that's
Joel,
hard for parents to
I'm
get.
sure there's still daily struggles that come up with you and your ex-wife with parenting. Your
Yeah, well,
girls
there's
are 16 and 13.
yeah.
That's we've opened up a whole new ball game
Yes, it
with this age.
it is, it's different, and again, my kids also have a stepmom whose opinion matters, and they have a stepdad whose opinion matters, and,
So do you find that all 4 of you are making decisions now together?
we have, yeah, so, like, when my older one
Right.
was interested in starting to date, we had a big family get together at a local restaurant, and the 4 adults and the older daughter sat down at a table for about 2 hours, and we sat there, I kid you not, for 2.5 hours hammering out,
Joel, this
here's
is like something out of a movie.
yeah, it was great. I was so thankful for it because we've done that on a number of occasions. Sometimes at their house, sometimes at our house. Sometimes it's being proactive because here's what's going to happen and we need to figure it out. Sometimes it's reactive because oh, here's what one of our kids has done and now we've got to figure out how we're going to respond. But I've
Yeah,
been
in
really
terms of
thankful.
discipline, you guys gotta be on the
Yeah,
same page for that
yeah,
too.
yeah, and that's real hard. But the best thing, the commandment number one is communicate well. You cannot have a
Over
successful blended
communicate
family. That's
maybe?
it, and that's exactly it. That's actually the exact word I use is
Mhm.
over communicate. When in doubt, communicate about it. Is this something the other house should know about? If there is any question whatsoever, tell them. Did your kid have an emotional blow up about something? Did they lose something? Did they fail something? Did they win something? Tell the other household so they know. Pick
There's
a meet
probably a lot less
and tell them.
fighting between you and the other parents because each parent always feels like they're being informed and they're not
Well,
missing
yeah,
out as much.
we're trying to, and we're
Yeah.
trying to do so in a way that is respectful of different people's opinions. And again, you're not always going to do it perfectly. And so that's another one of the aspects of blended family life, which is always be respectful. Always be respectful, even if the other side is not. If they're losing their temper and yelling, take a deep breath. The advice your grandmother gave you, count to 10, it's good advice for a reason. There's a reason grandmothers teach that. There's a great quote in Lord of the Rings where Tolkien says, do not despise the lore that has come down from distant years, right? Just because something is old fashioned does not make it bad. In fact, it often makes it better because it has stood the test of time. And I know that I'm biased saying that because I'm a history teacher. I was a history major. I studied medieval civ at one of the oldest, greatest universities in the world. I get that. That doesn't make it less true just because I'm biased in favor of it. Did you know that every society that's ever existed throughout all of history has some version of the golden rule that I mentioned earlier? You can look it up in the back of the book called Abolition of Man. C.S. Lewis wrote a whole list. Every society ever has had some version of treat other people the way you want to be treated. That is not what we see in American society today. It's not what we see from blended families. Good heavens, it's not what we see on social media.
No.
It's because we've forgotten the wisdom.
Joel, we judge others by their actions and ourselves by our intentions.
Absolutely. That's a great quote. And I think that's exactly correct. And the problem is no one knows your intentions. They only see your actions. And so that's all we can go on. And so the issue there is you've got to have your actions match your intentions. I'm divorced in large part due to my own mistakes. So I'm not judging
And
you.
you're living it every single day.
I'm dealing with the consequences of it 10 years later. And I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of it my entire life.
What I love about your situation is you are a blended family coach now,
Yeah.
and it must be fun teaching these families and couples because what they're having troubles with today is probably what you struggled with today too, you know?
Yeah, some of it is. My goal is to help people avoid the mistakes that I've made because the thing is
Right.
the way I was able to come up with these 10 commandments is I had about 5 or 6 years of doing it badly. I mean, my ex-wife and I used to fight a lot. And honestly, one of the things that changed it the most for me was my now wife, my second wife, because she's helped me become a different person. I don't have the same level of anger that I used to.
What
And one of the
changed? Because the constant is still you. So is it the different person or maybe just the learnings that you've taken into the second marriage?
I've been a Christian since I was about 14. I didn't really understand the need for true forgiveness and grace until after my divorce. Because there was one day, probably a couple years after I got divorced, that it's funny because it happened because I got fat.
That'll
I'm
make
about,
you evaluate your choices.
yeah, well, that's the thing is, when I played college soccer, I weighed about 135, 140 pounds. And then I got married and had kids and rounded out a little bit. And then when I got divorced, I just said, heck with it. I'm a 5'3", I weighed just shy of 200 pounds. I got real blimpy. And I was walking through Walmart one day because I'm from Alabama and I was fat. It's a stereotype for a reason down here. And I'm walking through Walmart and I decided I haven't stepped on a scale in months. I need to see, maybe I'm up to about one. I stepped on a scale and honest to God, my first thought was that must be broken. Like that's that was what honestly went through my head. And so I thought, okay, I've got to start making some changes. And what had been already happening is I had been confronted with my own sin. See, here's the thing. For about 2 years after my divorce, I was just angry and bitter. I was bitter at my ex. I was bitter at God. I was bitter at the world, and I was blaming everybody but me. And I realized that I had a choice. I could either continue to be a victim, or I could own up to the responsibilities that I had not been owning up to. And that meant I was now empowered to change that. See, here's the thing. As long as you're playing the victim, you are not empowered to do anything about your circumstances. Only when you decide to not be a victim anymore can you overcome your circumstances. If you're bound and determined to blame it on other people, fine, but don't expect your situation to change. You have to make it change, which means you've got to take personal responsibility. So I was confronted with my own sin. Here's the thing. Everything I'd ever taken pride in was gone after my divorce. Everything I'd ever been happy about, everything I'd ever wanted, everything that I'd ever really, been. So, because that's the other thing, is to go along with my anger, I was really cocky and arrogant. I just really did believe I was a better, smarter person than most people I met. And now I look back and I want to punch that guy in the face. So I can only imagine how many other people wanted to punch me in the face. Like, there's probably a list. They're probably taking numbers and doing raffles, could raise some good money. But I had to, that was the first step, was taking responsibility for my mistakes, and then taking responsibility for the fat Joel that I'd become, and then taking responsibility for the hurt that I'd caused my kids. Because only when I was willing to say, okay, yes, I did that, only then could I say, I'm sorry, and I hope you can forgive me, and I'm going to try to make it up to you as best I can. And I can't do anything to take away the pain. I can't do anything to take away the hurt that I caused my kids. What I can try to do is give them better memories now. And that's what I've been trying to do for the past 8.5 years. How successful I've
That's
been
all
is
you can
totally open
ask
for
for.
debate. Yeah, but that's all any parent can do. Blended family, nuclear family, first family, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Whatever family you're in, that all you can do is the best you can do. But until you're willing to take responsibility for stuff, you're always going to be blaming other people. And you can't, if you're blaming other people, you are giving them power over you. When you take responsibility, you empower yourself to change your circumstances. We take responsibility for your own life. Now, does that mean there aren't going to be curveballs thrown your way? Absolutely not. There are always going to be things that aren't fair. I get that. Again, I'm 5'3". I get life's not fair. Okay, I do. I don't like being laughed at by a snarky 12-year-old kid who's taller than I am just because his head's farther from the floor. I'm a little bitter. Life's not fair. I get it. You know what you can do? Pick yourself up, move on. Or you can keep blaming other people and just being bitter your whole life. I didn't really like that guy. And so I'm really thankful that God brought Mary Ellen, my wife, into my life, because she helped me lose weight. She was still in college at the time. She's about to start her junior year, and she came back from college, and I was working. I got out of teaching for 2 years following my divorce, and I was doing other stuff. And over the summer when she was home, she said, hey, I'm home from college, and I wanted to work out too. So if you want, like, I'll get up and work out with you. We'll go to the local YMCA. We got up 5 days a week at 5 o'clock in the morning, got up about 4:30, met at the Y at 5, ran 6 miles 5 days a week on the elliptical or the treadmill. And I dropped about 45 pounds in about 3 months. And during that time, she started to really be interested in me. And what happened is, right before Mary Ellen, my wife, went back to college, she told me that she really cared about me. And I said, no, you don't. I mean, I'm glad you think you do, but you don't. You can do much better. You should go do much better, to be honest, because I'm 9 years older than you, and I'm divorced with 2 kids, and I'm broke, and have a terrible reputation in our tiny town. Seriously, go find some. I'm not making any of that. Like, seriously, go find someone better.
You're like Mary Ellen. If you're looking for a catch, it's not me.
That's exactly right. Like, nobody, and as a father of daughters, I can say this, nobody looks around and goes, you know what I want for my daughter? I want the divorcee who's broke and bankrupt and foreclosed on and has 2 kids. That's what I want for my kid. That's the gem. That's the diamond in the rough we're looking for. Nobody says that. You know why? Because that's stupid. That's why nobody says that. Golly. So I went and dated this other lady for about 9 months and broke up with her because I wasn't ever seriously interested in dating her long term. And I told her that the whole time we were dating. Just, we had a couple things in common. And I realized that the entire time I was dating this other woman, I wasn't really being fair to her, because I still, like, Mary Ellen was in my heart. That's who I really wanted to be with. But I just thought, there's no way. Like, I've seen her and she's way out of my league. And also, like, she could do better on every level. Like, taller, smarter, better looking, wealthier, doesn't have a crap reputation, not divorced, not having children. Like, she should just go do better. But she was still interested in me. And so we talked about it. And I've always told my kids, and thankfully my older daughter went along with it, if you're interested in dating someone, they need to come and talk with me first and ask my permission. And so before I started
She
dating
was
her,
okay with that?
she didn't like it, but she
No.
agreed to it. But so before Mel and I started dating, I went up and talked with her parents. And, I said, you guys have known me most of my life. I've been in Anniston most of my life. I worked for you when I was in high school, and you know my situation. You know I'm divorced with 2 kids. You know that I'm probably going to be broke forever because I'm a school teacher. And If any of those are deal breakers, you just need to tell me now because your daughter and I are really interested in each other. And if we start dating, it's going to be with a view that we're probably going to get married. Because I've never done even when I was a teenager, I didn't do casual dating. Like, I don't have the time or the money or the patience for that crap. Either I'm interested in you to spend time with you for a long time, or we're just not going to hang out. For whatever reason, I'm just very old fashioned like that. And I remember her mom's going to kill me. I remember her mom looking at me in the middle of this conversation, and she looked right at me. She said, "You're not good enough for our daughter." And I said, "I know. I told her that. She won't listen to me." So because she's still interested, I'm also interested, and we'd love to give this a go. And the goal is to eventually get married. Not in the next. She's still had a year of college left. We weren't going to get married immediately, but we wanted to give the kids time to get acclimated to it and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was an interesting conversation. So we've been married 6.5 years now, and she's wonderful. She's an amazing stepmom to my kids. She has put up with more crap from me than she ever should have had to. She's worked really hard to have a good co-parenting relationship with my ex. And
How is she and your ex?
here's the funny part. It's much easier when I'm not around.
I believe it.
If the two of them can have a conversation, just the two of them, it normally goes pretty well. If I'm there, it's just more awkward and tense. So we've never had like yelling matches with each other. We don't do that. We've worked really hard not to, and I say we, I mean all four of us, not just like me and Mel. We've worked really hard not to do that. But if I'm not around, they get along fine. They've done a couple things together that are great stories and great examples to our kids. They went Christmas shopping for the kids together once or twice. They have thrown joint birthday parties together for the kids a couple times.
Cute.
We've all gone trick or treating together on multiple occasions. Our younger daughter is cheerleading now for the first time this year, so she had her first basketball game cheerleading thing the other night, and I went and sat with their mom. Like, we were the only two parents of the four there, so I went and sat with their mom during the whole second game, and we talked because we can, and it's because we worked really hard to be able to have that kind of relationship. Actually, we were texting each other earlier today about what to do for a car for our older daughter because she wants to get a job, but she doesn't have a car, but she can't help pay for a car, which is what we've always told her she needs to do because she doesn't have a job. And so we're in this catch-22 that we're
Chicken
trying
and
to
an
sort
egg.
out. Yeah, and again, it's because we worked really hard to have that kind of relationship where we can do those things. It doesn't come easily, it doesn't come swiftly, and there are always going to be some bumps that happen. But I'm really thankful for what we've been able to create because we're trying to create the best environment we can for the three kids. Because now it's not just my two daughters, it's also their little brother. And some people use half brother or what. We'd never use that. We use little brother.
Yeah.
Family is family. He's your little brother. And so whenever I see him, I say, "Hey, little buddy," that's what I call him. And "Hey, Mr. Joel." And it's wonderful. We have a great little relationship. I'm really thankful for that.
You live in a really small town, though. What does all
Yeah,
the rest of the town think?
I don't care. I gave up my,
But have you heard? I would assume that
I don't
they
know.
think your situation is pretty inspirational
I've heard
and one to
something.
follow.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that from some of the teachers at school, but honestly, I don't ask because truly, 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 I just don't care. About 10 years ago, when I went through my divorce and everything bad happened, people take sides.
Of
A
course.
lot of
The
and
family, the
that's right.
friends, the people who
Yeah,
don't even know you.
yeah, and that's okay. And again, I'm not saying whose side they did or didn't take or should or shouldn't take. I don't care. What I did is I stopped caring what other people think to a very large degree. And it's not because you're not valuable and your opinion doesn't
Were
matter.
you always like that?
No, I used to be
Mm.
absolutely heinously caught up in what other people thought about me. Like growing up, I can remember coming home from school one time and crying because some kid had made fun of me for being short or fat or having a mullet or all of the above, whatever it was. And I was so heartbroken at home. And my mom was like, "Why do you care what they think? Why does it matter so much?" I said, "I don't know. It just does." And these days, I'm 100% the other direction. And I just don't care. I just don't care. And so students come in my class, "Coach Hawbaker, we really love your class. That's great." I don't care. "I kind of hate your class. I think it's boring." Good. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. You have to take it. You have to pass it. I love my class, and I'm doing what's best for you. Nobody likes it when you do what's best for them, right? Kids don't like it when your mom makes you eat the Brussels sprouts. Teenagers don't like it when your mom makes you be home by a certain curfew. Kids don't like it when dad makes you drive the speed limit. They're doing those things because they're good for you. I don't care if you like it. That's not my issue. My ultimate goal is your long-term well-being, not your short-term happiness.
Right. Just in your experience of teaching 12 and 13-year-olds, what are some life lessons you try to instill in them in one school year?
The biggest one is hard work. My goal is to make sure every kid learns how to work hard. And that means assigning work that challenges them while also providing them with enough help to where the kids can all do the work. Because, every kid is different. Some kids pick it up real quick. Other kids are struggling every day. So my job is to provide whatever help is necessary for every kid to be successful. Now, success may look like different things. If I've got a kid who's got a 92 but should have a 100, that's not success. If I've got a kid who has a 75 but had a 66 last week, that's better. But the other part of it is too, it's like I want their behavior to change. I tell them the first day, if when you leave here, your behavior is the exact same as it was when you came in, I didn't do my job. I want to teach them honesty. And so we talk about in my class, cheating on homework is just as bad as cheating on the test. Cheating is cheating is cheating. It's not about how many points it's worth, right? What you're doing is you're passing off work that isn't yours as yours. That's dishonesty. So I want them to learn hard work, and I want to teach them how to be compassionate and empathetic to other people. So during lunch a couple days ago, we're talking, and the conversation very quickly turns to making fun of this kid in another class. I said, stop. Just stop. I said, listen, there are millions of ways to have conversation that are not making fun of your classmates who aren't even in here to defend themselves, by the way. You're capable of so much better because kids don't learn if everything they do is wonderful and great and excellent or, well, that was okay. No, you need to know this was absolute garbage. You are so much better than that. What you turned in was awful. You are so much smarter. Please show me that. But which do you think sends a more powerful message, right? On my podcast not long ago, I just interviewed a lady who works a lot with dads of daughters, and especially dads with estranged daughters. And her message is one that I want to repeat, and that is, it is never too late. If you're breathing and they're breathing, there's hope for a relationship at some point. Ask yourself what you can do today to try to rebuild that relationship. And she gave a great idea that I think would be wonderful for estranged dads to consider, and that is to buy yourself a notebook and every day just write something in it that you thought about your kid. Here's what I wish we could have done today. Here's a memory that I had of you from when you were younger today. Because one day when you're able to rebuild that relationship, she can see tangibly that this wasn't just something that happened overnight. This is something you've been thinking about for days, weeks, months, years, and you can hand them that. And I thought, wow, that is a mind-blowingly brilliant idea. I love that idea.
So simple, but so beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was wonderful. Her name's Dr. Michelle Watson, by the way, if anybody wants to check her out. She's spectacular. She's going to be on one of the upcoming episodes of my podcast, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
Amazing. I'll definitely check that out.
Please do. She's
wonderful. What a cool job that she specializes in that.
Yeah, she's written a couple books about conversations for dads to have with their daughters, just conversation starters and stuff. And I learned a lot from her, so I really enjoyed having her on. That was pretty cool.
I saw that you wrote a book on leadership. Why?
So that was what about 3 or 4 years ago, I started getting into public speaking in addition to teaching because I've always been kind of a ham. I love being on stage. I love being in front of people. And I thought, well, this would be a fun way to get my message out to more than just the kids in my classroom. But what I did is I sat down, and leadership was what I really wanted to focus on because I'd seen it done well and I'd seen it done poorly, both in my life and in the lives of others. And I wrote an ebook about my dad that started out as a biography and became kind of an ebook that's half biography, half leadership. And it's called Extraordinary Leadership, 10 Things Dad Taught Me Without Saying Anything. And so I wrote this book, and it was all about gospel-centered servant leadership from a very Christian worldview. And the idea there is the way that the world views leadership is often top-down. And today, it's often bottom-up, very democratic. No, neither one of those works well long-term.
Don't right? I know it.
I just read a quote the other day that said, democracy is the fairest government system, but dictatorship is the most efficient. And that's very true.
Right? But both are awful.
That's exactly right. But pure democracy, I told my kids this today, they couldn't. I said, pure democracy is a terrible idea. Letting every idiot vote.
Organizations do not work.
No, you cannot have a democracy where everyone's opinion matters the same amount because some people are dumb or just uninformed.
Thank you.
So I believe the best style of leadership is what we call servant leadership. It is where you do have a person or a small group in charge. Their goal is not to set goals necessarily. Their goal is to help figure out what the goals should be, taking input, but then deciding on it amongst whoever's actually in charge and best informed. And what they do is they empower and facilitate others to do their jobs. So the name of the book is Inverted Leadership. Lead others better by forgetting about yourself. And the idea there is what a true leader should be doing is putting everyone else's needs in the organization in front of their own. Because if I help other people do their job well, then everything gets, if I've hired competent people, if I've put good people in the right positions, then I can just get out of the way and I can provide them guidance when they need it. But if I have to nitpick everything they're doing, then either I'm a mother hen or I have put bad people in bad positions. And I've worked in schools where I've been nitpicked like that by administrations. It's annoying. You hired me to teach, right? Get out of the way and let me teach. If you didn't think I could do it, don't hire me. It's very simple, right? That kind of thing. So That was what the book is about. It's fun because I actually wrote it in the car. I've got a 45-minute commute to school and from school each day. So I have an hour and a half in the car. And what I would do is I would actually outline a chapter on a 305 card and then use my dad's old handheld AA battery powered miniature cassette recorder. And I would record a chapter while I'm driving down the road. And then I'd go home and either my wife or I would type it up. And that's how I got the rough draft of my book
That's
done.
so
So
efficient.
it was pretty cool. I learned that. I wish I could take credit for that. I learned that from somebody else. And I wish I remembered who I'd give them credit for it. But it was pretty cool because I thought, I'm really busy. I teach, I coach, I've got a wife, I got kids. When do I have time to write a book? For about 2 or 3 months, that's what I did. So instead of listening to audiobooks or podcasts, which is what I normally do with my drive, that's what I did as I wrote a book. And so now I've got that one's on Amazon too. I think it's $1 for the ebook. I think it's like, I don't know, $10 for the paperback. But again, if you want an e-copy of it, email me. I will send you a free copy of it. If you want what's in there, I want you to have it. Because again, that's part of servant leadership. If you want it, I want to help you. So
Joel, what's next for you?
So I'm actually working on another book right now. It's called 10 Commandments for Blended Families. I'm hoping that the rough draft will be done around Christmas time and
Can you
hoping to
tell us
publish it.
one or two?
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple earlier. The first one is communicate well. You got to over communicate. Some of the other ones are always be respectful, be as consistent as possible, right? We talked about some of those things. Here's the big one. Here's another big one that I love to share. Choose to believe the best about the other household. Choose to believe the best. See, here's the thing.
Joel, that's so easy to say.
It is. But here's the thing. We get to choose what we believe every day, right? Because 90% of what we believe is not facts, it is opinions. C.S. Lewis has a great quote in one of my other all-time favorite books called Mere Christianity. He says, if you choose to believe the best about other people and make them as comfortable as possible, that will resolve most of the problems, right? And he's using that in a different context, but the truth is the same in blended families. So if my ex texts me about something and I read it, and I could read it in two different ways. One way is, oh, that's nice. And the other way is, I cannot believe she said that. Choose to read it the nice way, because text messages are infamous for not being able to
Agreed. That's why I switched to voice messages.
which is
You hear tone more.
That's exactly right. And so again, especially in an emotionally charged situation like a divorce, dude, you're going to read negative tone into it 100% of the time. You got to get over that crap. Choose to believe the best. So that's one of the other 10 commandments. I've also written a 31-day devotional for blended families based on the book of Proverbs. One for
What does
each
that
day of the month.
mean, a devotional?
So devotional is something that you would read maybe to start your day, have a little bit of quiet time. You read. So there's about 5 or 6
It's like
Bible
a
verses.
short script?
Yeah, and it could be sometimes, depending on the devotional, it's 1 verse or 3 verses. Sometimes it's a whole chapter, depending on who's doing the devotional. And then typically there is an explanation after it. So in my devotional, what there is there is anywhere from 1 to maybe 10 verses of the first book of Proverbs for the day 1, or the first chapter of Proverbs for day 1. And then there's an explanation of it and how it applies specifically to blended families. And then there is a prayer based on what you just read. So that's day 1. And then day 2 is Proverbs chapter 2. A few verses, explanation, application, prayer. And so it's 31 days for blended families. And so I'm working on getting that published as well. And so when those 2 things are ready to go, I'm really excited about getting to launch those hopefully in 2021. The other thing I want to mention this for your listeners, if anybody's part of a blended family or knows someone who is, I offer a free resource. It's called a complete blended family toolkit. It's got the 10 commandments for blended families. It has 5 discussions every blended family needs to have. It has 10 suggested behaviors for blended families. And it's got a 7-day devotional for blended families that I wrote specifically for that. It's free of charge. Just email me and I'll send you the PDF of it. I've given out, I don't even know how many of those, but it's something that I provide for people, because if you're just looking for a place to start, here's a place to start. Here's a bunch of resources all in one location. Off you go. The other big thing right now is my podcast. I've done 4 episodes
And it's
so far.
fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate. I'm really honored that you took the time to listen to some of that. Thank you.
I do my research on my guests. I don't
That's
let people
good.
come on until I know what I'm talking about.
Hey, that's awesome. I really do. I appreciate that. Again, if you haven't listened to the one where my wife and I interviewed each other yet, that was hysterical. We had such a good time.
That's where I'm going next.
There were a couple moments that were eye-opening for me. I was like, oh wow, okay, I didn't realize that was such a big deal. Like, so one of the questions I ask all my guests is, what's your favorite blended family experience or your favorite blended family memory? And mine for my wife was, we went out to dinner before we got married. It was her birthday, and the kids were younger. And I asked them completely on the spot, just put them on the spot. And I said, hey, tell Mary Ellen something nice about her. And my older daughter looked at her and said, so this kid who was raised on Cinderella, right? She said, I'm really thankful that you're not going to be an evil stepmom like in Cinderella.
And Mary Ellen's like, that's all I ever need to hear.
It was wonderful. It was such a cool moment. It was such a cool moment. So that's what I'm working on now: a book, a devotional, the podcast. I'm looking to expand my coaching, because there's so many families that need it. I read a statistic during the pandemic where something like 500 to 1,000 new blended families are created in America every day. 500 to 1,000 every single
There's a
day.
huge need for what you do, Joel. Before I met you, I've never heard of anyone doing blended family coaching, and it wasn't until I heard that you do that, I realized how necessary it's needed, you know?
It's a lot, and I'm glad that other people are starting to see the need for it as well. Believe it or not, there's a number of people who out there who are doing what I do, and I've connected with a lot of them. It's been
Good.
cool. Some of my favorites are check out Ron Deal. He's a resource I always point people to. He's a Family Life Blended. Gil and Brenda Stewart, Mike and Kim Anderson, Tanisha Okeke, Jay and Esther Hutchinson. Like these are all people that you can find them on YouTube and you can find them on Instagram or whatever. And there's a growing body of resources for blended families. But the truth of the matter is, if you go to a Books a Million or Barnes and Noble right now and you go to the marriage section, you're going to find 100 marriage books for every one book on remarriage.
Mm.
That's what it
Wow,
feels
so
like.
true.
And so my goal is to try to bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah, I could share lots of highs and lows of my experience with blended families. Joel, anything you feel has been left unsaid or anything you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I appreciate you asking. There's one quote that I share on most podcasts that I've been on in the past couple years. It's one of my favorites, and it's from Lord of the Rings. It's in the movie too, as well, which makes me happy. But it's in the book, and one of the characters is talking about how he wished that things hadn't happened this way. Frodo is talking with Gandalf. Said, "I wish this hadn't happened in my time." And Gandalf says, "Yeah, well, so do I. So do all who see such times." And here's the quote. He says, "But that's not for us to decide." He says, "All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us." That's it. And again, that's personal responsibility, that's accountability, that's everything. So that's it. We all get 24 hours in a day. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And that's why I'm deeply grateful for you taking the time to let me come on your show. Listeners, I'm really grateful to you for giving us some of your time. I don't know whether you're like me, you're washing dishes, you're working out, you're driving down the road. You choose to spend some of your time with Janelle and with me, and I really appreciate that. So that's what I want to leave people with is just, choose how you spend your time wisely. There's a lot better things we could be doing with our time most of the time.
Well, Joel, I'll be honest with you. Prior to our conversation tonight, I had an unnecessarily stressful day and I almost canceled or rescheduled on you. And I sat there quite frankly about to have a panic attack and burst in tears.
Oh,
And
no, I'm so sorry.
no, no, it's good. I sat there and said, you know what? My podcast, because it's a new podcast, my podcast is one thing that I really care and love about lately. And I know that when I go talk to Joel, it doesn't matter what we talk about. And I don't even truly know Joel yet, but I know that I will feel great after that conversation. So if there's anything that's going to make me feel good, it's let's go do the podcast
Right, do
today.
the thing. Yeah, well, good for you. Well done.
And I will say everything we talked about today, especially around the leadership and intentions versus actions, I have a lot of reflecting to do tonight because the reasons why I'm stressed is there's probably a lot of things that I need to take accountability for, and
Mm.
I'm to blame just as much as the people that I'm blaming in my mind today. So
Yeah, that's not very fun. I'm sorry.
no, 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 no. It's the reminder that I need it tonight to not only give me peace, not only to give myself grace, but
Good.
to go to bed tonight just reflecting and go into tomorrow because tomorrow is a whole other day.
Yeah, the stuff that's outside of your control, just gotta let it go. Because
I
if it's gonna
know.
stress you out and you can't do anything about it, like, what is that doing? And again, like 100 other things we said, it's not easy to say, hard to do, but it's a skill that can be acquired and learned and improved upon. So, sorry to have been the voice of conscience tonight. I didn't mean to be Jiminy
No,
Cricket
I
in the
need it. I
world, but,
needed that.
you know,
It was
I've had a
all the
great
reminders I needed. It's the
good.
advice I would give to a friend,
Yeah.
but never take myself, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely. It's way easier to give other people advice. Absolutely. Yeah. I've had a great time. Thank you so much. It really has been a blast. Listeners, thank you for spending your time with us. I really appreciate that as well.
Joel, thank you so much. This is going to be a well-listened episode. It's going to resonate with a lot of people, and thank you so much for doing
Yeah.
this.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.